Welcome to Section 2, Chapter 1, which is on key definitions pertaining to data, information systems, so on and so forth. What is data? Literally speaking, data is nothing but a fact, and this is about a business fact, an organizational fact. So something which has happened, which gets captured, which is data. Data can exist in any form, but is commonly identified with a soft copy of it, which is your digital form. But in business, we have today a wide variety of data. It's not just numbers, it's just not just text, it can be even photograph. For example, an insurance company can actually take a photograph of an accident and use it as part of the claim processing. So data of variety of kinds is now being used in business systems. What is information? Information is essentially data which has been processed, but processed in what manner? So as to make it usable and meaningful to the person who is going to receive it. So essentially, since the person who receives it can be varied in the organization, he could be at different levels, he can have different roles. Accordingly, what constitutes information is not a very precise definition. It is subject to the receiver, so it's to the eye of the beholder. So one man's information can actually become some other person's data, and therefore you need to design information in a manner which is appropriate to the job he is doing, to the level in the hierarchy, to the exact requirement that he wants at this point of time, so on and so forth. So information needs to be designed. One step further, information also is constructed in the minds of the person who reads it. So many a time when you look at a report, you not only look at the numbers which are given in the report, but you're mentally constructing relationships between data, which is not what the report is doing, but what you are doing in your mind. And therefore you can say that information is also constructed in the mind of the reader. And therefore, as a designer of systems, it becomes my job to ensure that I design information in a manner which not only makes it easy for the person to understand and digest, but also helps in a way to establish relationships with the data. So the question is, can I design information and information systems which are more meaningful, more relevant, and more intuitive from the standpoint of the reader? What is a system? A system is actually nothing but an assemblage of several components which act together in a coherent manner to be able to deliver a certain goal or an output or a result. So the unified system theory actually talks about a system is consisting of a whole lot of components which have a single-minded devotion to a particular goal. They're all trying to collaborate in a manner that they achieve that single goal. The Latin word or Greek word system actually is literally meaning combine, and that's what the synergy between these components talk about. Now, in the information system area, the word system therefore means components such as hardware, software, documents, people who actually operate these systems, so on and so forth, all of them combining towards achieving a particular goal in the organization. The system actually supports the organization's purpose, vision, mission, and goals. Systems, however, can be both closed or open loop. Open loop systems are those where they don't necessarily have a feedback mechanism, and whereas closed loop systems are those where there is a feedback system, and based on which the system corrects itself as it goes along. Now, some of the thoughts on information. One is information reduces uncertainty and risks in decision making. So, for example, if I'm trying to dig for oil in this very place and I go on digging, spend a lot of money and energy in doing it, at the end of it, you are in Mumbai, all that you can expect to get is water, for example, because Mumbai is an island and accessing water is much easier than sea water actually. So you will not strike oil perhaps, and you'll actually strike seawater. Now, if instead of wasting your time and money, would it not be more sensible to actually get a specialist to do an analysis of the soil and give you some data about it, and then tell you that perhaps there is no oil to be found in this area? Now, that the cost of that information from that expert really adds value to your decision making, because if you had spent money on that, you would have saved a whole lot of money in the digging and excavation that you did. This is the importance of money, information. It actually reduces the risk associated with decision making. Unfortunately, many organizations are really starved of information. They say organizations have lots of data, but they lack information, which is to say that there's a lot of facts which are there. Those facts are distributed all over. They're not in a form which is readily available, and certainly not in a form which a user wants from the standpoint of taking decisions. It will be surprising if you, or not so surprising rather, if you asked an executive as to what is the basis of taking decisions, most of them in companies, despite advances in computer science, etc., will still continue to say that we take decisions based on our gut feel, which is sad because you have the ERPs of the world, you have the supply chain systems, and you have the CRMs, and yet people seem to be taking decisions based on their own gut feel, their own judgment. Therefore, what is the value of information? Like we saw in the excavation case, the oil exploration case, that's the value of information. The amount of money that you would have spent for exploring for oil and then actually found water, that amount of money is the value at risk. If you are able to save that money because of a small cost that you incur in that expert's opinion on the soil that you've looked at, that is the amount of saving that you get. So the value is really speaking in terms of the amount you would have invested in exploration minus the amount that you spend in in getting to an expert and getting his opinion about. Since information reduces risk, the probability of the risk multiplied by the value of the decision would give expected value. So you can actually compute a notional expected value of the decision that you are taking. Many a time, any information which eliminates the risk would therefore add value to the decision. And one way, therefore, to judge whether information is useful, it's valuable or not, is to find out the extent to which your decision would have got altered because of the availability of that information. The other way to look at it is look at the concept of utility, which we're familiar with from economics. So utility is generally spoken in terms of form utility, space utility, or time utility, and it precisely applies to information as well. So information of the right kind, the right form, at the right time and the right place is extremely important to make it useful. It also means that if there is information which does not qualify for any of these, it does not get the perceived value that you would expect. The other side of this is today, for example, thanks to internet, we have loads and loads of information at our fingertips. We keep surfing and we keep accessing, we get a lot of push mails, and all this information actually nothing but overloads us. So if you apply the utility concept, too much is also too bad. And as a result, information overload is a problem that we are facing. We really need to design systems which therefore provide the right amount of information which is appropriate for the kind of work that somebody is performing and to the kind of decision that he is likely to take. So for example, if the perceived risk is less, I don't need too much of information. But if the perceived risk is very high, I want to get into more details and find out what the information is. Just to give an example, if my son or daughter were to ask me for 5 rupees, I wouldn't think and just give it to him or her. If he or she says, give me 500, I would at least ask a question, why do you need it and where are you going? And if it were to say 5,000 rupees, then I would say, can we please discuss? So if you notice, the amount of information that I am seeking from my child varies depending on the perceived risk. So the minute he or she says 500 or says 5,000, I am on the alert. I want to know why he or she is asking it. So as risk increases, the desire to gather more information increases. And this is precisely what should happen and does happen with executives. So if you can have information systems which can flex themselves, which can provide more or less of information depending on what the need of the situation is, that's an ideal design for an information system. It also does not overload the person. At the same time, it ensures that there's a perfect marginal utility for the information that is being provided. With that, we come to the end of chapter 1, which is the key concepts and definitions around information. Thank you for joining me.